Good morning. Welcome to our information session on renewals and condominium manager conditional licensing requirements. I'm Doug Dixon, one of RECA's regulatory compliance advisors, and my co-host for this session is Shawna Risdon, RECA's licensing manager. Brian Dewey will be also assisting us. Brian is our communications and connections manager at RECA. We're happy you are joining us this morning. This session will be recorded and posted later to the RECA website. As we proceed, you will have ample opportunities to ask questions and get clarifications. Please keep your microphone and camera off unless you are called upon with a question. Here are the topics and the order we'll be covering them in. Shawna Risdon, RECA's licensing manager, will cover the licensing renewal process. Should you have any questions, please enter them into the chat. Once she has completed her overview, she will first respond to the questions in the chat, which Brian will summarize. Should there be any other questions about renewals after she has finished those responses, please raise your hand and we will respond to the additional questions in the order they are received. Once Shawna has finished, I will go over the requirements for removing conditions from your license. Once again, you can enter questions into the chat. So just a quick update for statistics as of today. So we have 191 condominium management brokerages and brokers, and then we actually have a relatively high number of associate broker licenses as compared to other industries, and at 174, and then there's 227 associate condo managers with a total license base in condominium management of 582 people. The number of, and these are numbers that have since we started regulating back in the winter. However, the number of condo management license of individuals has decreased by about 40 people since last winter. RECA's practice team, review team, has visited over 50 condominium management brokerages in the last 6 months. They have focused on brokerages that are new to being regulated in the industry. This has been done to help brokerages get off to a good start in meeting the regulatory requirements. And I'll now turn the licensing renewal section over to Shawna.
Thanks, Doug. Good morning, everyone. As Doug mentioned, I'm Shawna Risdon. I am the Licensing Services Manager at RECA. This is, I think, my 15th annual renewal process since joining RECA. And so it's a busy time of year, and we wanted to just take some time to provide a little bit more assistance to those of you who haven't gone through the renewal process before. And so what you're looking at now on the screen is the percentage of renewals that we have seen come through the system since we launched for brokers and brokerages on August 15th, and launching for associate brokers and associates on August 22nd. So brokers and brokerages, the renewal process goes hand in hand. The application, the renewal application itself, is a combined application. So the percentage of brokerages and brokers renewed is getting pretty close to 50% as of yesterday. And that will be the exact same number because you can't renew a broker without a brokerage and vice versa. The associate brokers and associates are lagging a little bit, which is typical. Again, they had sort of a week later start than the brokers and brokerages did. And so we're looking at just shy of 15% for associate brokers and close to 20% for associates at this point. Next slide, Doug. So for those of you who don't know, the renewal deadline is September 30th. All applications need to be completed, including the payment of the licensing fees, by that date. There are no extensions for the renewal period. So make sure that your application is complete and that the payment has been made before the end of the day on September 30th. The renewal fees for broker and brokerages this year are $925. That's combined for the broker and brokerage together. and $475 for non-brokers. So all the associates and associate brokers pay that $475 to renew their license for the next licensing period. We provided a little bit of information here about acceptable methods of payment. So the easiest and most efficient way to pay for your renewal is through the RECA online system. We do take Visa, MasterCard, Visa debit, Visa prepaid. The transaction is instantaneous. As soon as that payment is made, the renewal is complete. If that doesn't work for you, there are a couple of other offline options. You can have a check, bank draft, or money order delivered to RECA by 2 p.m. on September 30th. Just keep in mind, if you're mailing something in, September 30th is a federal statutory holiday and there is no mail service on the 30th. So you'll want to make sure that if you're mailing something in, that we receive it by the 29th. And for those folks that neither of those options work, we do have online banking set up with a handful of banking institutions. So if that's an option that you need to investigate, you can email us at licensing@reca.ca, and we can provide more information about that process and what banks we do recognize payments from. Next slide, Doug. So just a quick word about renewing early. We see a very large spike in calls and emails as we get closer to the September 30th deadline. Unfortunately, human nature is, to procrastinate and maybe take care of things a little later, closer to a deadline than we otherwise would. But that can really have a significant impact on your ability to practice because, as I had mentioned previously, there are no extensions to the renewal deadline. So you want to get in there, get renewed sooner than later. If something goes wrong with your payment, or you're having a technical issue, or maybe you're not able to log into your account for whatever reason, if that's occurring this time of year, earlier in September, we're a lot more able to assist you quickly than we would be on September 30th. So if you do happen to miss the renewal deadline, effective October 1st, you're unable to practice. So it's a big risk to take. We definitely encourage you to get renewed as soon as possible. So if you do miss the deadline, then you do have an opportunity to reinstate your license. It's a different process. If you're a broker and you have missed the deadline, then you need to reapply to reopen your brokerage through your RECA account. And if you're a non-broker, then your broker needs to initiate the reinstatement application for you. Once you are reinstated, you're able to commence practice, but between the time that you cease to be licensed and you are relicensed, you cannot engage in any activity. Next slide, please, Doug. Okay, so for any licensees that are not planning to renew, if you're a broker, you definitely want to let if you have any licensees registered with your brokerage, you definitely want to let them know in advance. And then you can cease your brokerage through your RECA account at any time on September 30th. If you're an associate or an associate broker, again, you want to let your broker know in advance, and then you can cancel your license on or before September 30th through your RECA account on the licensing tab. For anyone that is not planning to renew, if you send us an email at renewals@reca.ca, then we can remove you from the distribution list for future renewal reminders. We do tend to send out quite a few of these over the next couple of weeks. And so if you know that you're not planning to renew and you don't want to see those messages anymore, you can just let us know and we'll remove you from that list. That won't prevent you from changing your mind, should you, and getting in and renewing. It will just prevent the emails from coming out to you. Next slide, please, Doug. Okay, so just I'm going to kind of go through these next screens a little bit quicker. This presentation is going to be available should you need to come back and refer to anything that I'm talking about here, but there's a lot of information to go through, so I'm going to kind of go through a little bit quickly. And so for the brokerage renewal process, again, that's a combined application where you're renewing both your own license and the brokerage license together. Brokers and all licensees must report any unreported events captured by Section 40 of the rules. That could be anything from discipline to criminal charges or convictions to bankruptcy. Anything that has occurred that you haven't yet reported to the registrar, you need to take care of that before you start your renewal. Also, if there have been any amendments to your brokerage, whether that's a corporate or a partnership structure change or a change to your brokerage name, we would need to be notified of that and process that change before you commence the renewal. And then similarly, some of these online processes for updating trust accounts, address, fiscal year end, you would need to make sure that all of that information is up to date and accurate in your account before you start your renewal. And, oh, I see a little typo on this page here. Sorry about that. But if you do own less than 50% of your brokerage, then we require the brokerage renewal suitability questions document. It's available on our website. These sections on this page that are underlined, those are hyperlinks that you can access. So that document would need to be completed by an official of the brokerage before you can renew online. Next screen, Doug. So to complete the renewal, it's pretty straightforward. We've tried to make it as navigable as we possibly can. So in your brokerage tab of your RECA account, there will be a Start Renewal button. You click that button, go through the screens, answer all of the questions, and at the end of that process, make your payment and you're done. You can probably get it done under a minute. It's also mobile friendly, so if you need to do that on your phone, you can do that there. Next screen, please, Doug. Once you've completed your renewal, on your My Brokerage tab, you will see a few things change that will confirm for you that you are successfully renewed. So the light, we call it sort of a status light, it's a little dot on the licensing page, that will turn green. Right now, prior to renewal, that light is yellow. So it will go from yellow to green. Your renewal certificate will be there for brokerage and broker, and you can download those certificates. I will mention though, because that license is not currently active, it becomes active on October 1st. The conditions for your education requirements they won't be visible on that license until October 1st. Your renewal status on that page will show renewed, and it will also show the date right below that you did complete your renewal. Next slide, please, Doug. So a quick overview again of the associate and associate broker renewal process. It's a little bit different than broker and brokerage, similar in sort of high level points, but a couple of key things we wanted to point out. So similar to brokers, and as I said, all licensees need to report any events under Section 40 before they renew. And associates and associate brokers cannot renew, they can't start the process until their brokerage is renewed. So any of you who are joining in, who are brokers, if you've got licensees with your brokerage, please know that they cannot start the renewal process until you've completed yours. Next slide, please, Doug. So for an associate and associate broker to complete the renewal, they do initiate that application through their own RECA account. It's under the licensing tab, similar process to brokers. There will be a big Start Renewal Now button. You click that button, go through the questions, submit the application to your broker for review. Once the broker has received the application and accepted it, the broker will assign responsibility for the payment of the renewal fees. And if it's assigned to you as the associate or associate broker, you will receive a system email letting you know when that happens and that you can go back in and access your application to make that payment. You will access that application that's already underway through the My Applications page of your RECA account. You start the renewal from the licensing tab and you finish it from the My Applications page. Next slide, please, Doug. So similar to brokers and brokerages, you can confirm your successful renewal on the licensing tab of your MyRECA account. And again, you'll see that license status button has changed from yellow to green. You'll also have a copy of your renewed certificate available to download. And your renewal status will show renewed with the date right below that you completed your renewal online. Next slide, please, Doug. So for brokers that are managing the renewal of their licensees, again, just a couple of high-level points here. Be aware that licensees initiate their own renewal application. That's different than when you're adding a licensee to your brokerage, where you as the broker need to initiate the application for them. For renewals, licensees initiate their own renewal application. When that application is completed, you will see their application ready to be reviewed on your My Applications page, under the My People tab, on the My Brokerage tab. You will then review the application, all of their responses that they've included in that application, and then assign the payment for that application to either your brokerage or the licensee. Next page, please, Doug. So if you assign the responsibility for payment to the brokerage, at the end of that review and acceptance process, you'll be taken to a payment screen, and you can make the payment right then and there using a credit card. You can pay for it later. You would just need to go find that application again on the applications page, and there will be a payment button beside that application. Or you can pay for it later by adding it to your brokerage's shopping cart. If you have a number of licensees that you want to pay all together at once, you can do that through the shopping cart function in your brokerage. If you assign the payment to the licensee, again, they would be notified by system email. You can keep track of how those applications are going in your account. And once the licensee has completed their payment, you'll be notified by email as well. Next slide, please, Doug. So keeping track of your licensees' renewals, again, depending how large your brokerage is, there is a renewal summary report available on the My Brokerage tab. And there's a couple screenshots here. Again, you'll have access to this presentation if you need to come back and see where those are. The renewal summary report will tell you the status of each licensee's renewal, whether they've started the process, whether it's waiting for payment, or whether it's been completed. Next slide, please, Doug. We wanted to provide you with some additional resources above and beyond this presentation. We do have information on our website under the Renewing My License page, and that includes the dates that we talked about, links to some MyRECA tutorials if you need sort of a step-by-step, screenshot by screenshot view of how the renewal process works. Answers to frequently asked questions, such as how to retrieve your MyRECA login information. For some folks, you know, they're not logging into their account very frequently, and it's easy to lose track of all the usernames and passwords we have for everything that we do. Where to find renewal payment receipts, and special considerations when transferring a license during the renewal period, canceling a license after renewal has been completed, etc. There's a couple of links here as well to those MyRECA tutorials that are referred to on the Renewing My License page. So there is one specifically for renewing your brokerage and one for renewing an associate or associate broker. Because renewing the associate and associate broker process includes two parts, so the associate part and then the broker part, you may, even if you're a broker, you may want to have a look at that tutorial as well. You can always email us if you run into a problem or have a question or need assistance with something. We have a designated email account for renewal-specific questions, renewal@reca.ca. If you're a broker and you have some brokerage amendments to report or some questions about that process, you can contact brokerinfo@reca.ca. And if you have just general licensing questions, not related to renewal or brokerage amendments necessarily, you can email us at licensing@reca.ca. And of course, you can call us anytime, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. At our main phone number or our toll-free number, depending where you're located. Next slide, Doug. So that's it for my presentation. I know I went through that fairly quickly, so if there's any questions that you've got right now, Brian, maybe you can check the chat or put your hand up if you did have any questions you wanted to discuss.
Currently nothing in the chat. Oh, we have a question from Andrew.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Andrew. Yep.
Hi, Shawna. Thank you very much for that presentation. I've been a broker in the real estate world for a very, very long time. And this is the first time I think I participated on a great refresher on how to go through this process. So thank you for putting it together, you, Doug, and the rest of the team. I thought it was very helpful. When I was renewing the brokerage this year, I wish I'd had this information maybe 4 weeks ago, but we got through it and we're all in good standing. So thank you. I just want to address one of the comments that Doug had made at the beginning about the number of associate brokers. I just got to pull up my notes here just a second. Being at 174, and that number being kind of disproportionately high compared to, hey, Doug, to the real estate sector. I know in real estate, unless it's changed, in order to become a broker, you needed to be a licensed associate for a period of time. I think it's 5 years, and then you were able to apply. I know in the applications, and Doug and I had talked about this several months ago, because we had several of our associates who answered some of the questions in the application document through a lens that's slightly different than I think what RECA had intended. I know I had informed my team, I'd provided a list to Doug of those that had said, whoops, we'd rather not be associate brokers. We provided a list, and I believe the vast majority of my team did communicate with RECA and were successful in having that part removed. My question is, very long-winded way to get to my question. I think I have 1 or 2 that didn't follow instructions that were provided back in whenever that was, Doug, June or so. Is it too late?
Not at all. Go ahead, Shawna. Go ahead, Shawna.
Oh, okay. I'll chime in a little bit, and then if you have anything to add, Doug, feel free. So yes, we did receive numerous updates or requests to update license class, not only from your brokerage, but from others. All of them that we received, we processed. And a little bit later in the presentation, actually, we are going to speak specifically on this issue of downgrading license class from associate broker to associate. So Doug, unless there's anything you wanted to add at this point, maybe we'll address that a little bit more in depth further out. For sure.
As Doug knows, I'm not very patient, so I'm glad to hear that it's going to be addressed later in the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Any other questions for Shawna?
Not for Shawna specifically. In the chat, there is one about where this will be uploaded later. Once we complete and we sort of upload it onto our YouTube channel, it will sit on the condominium management page on our website. I'll try to put it on the main page as well, right on our homepage. You'll find a link to it, and we'll probably also put it out on our social media. So it'll be a bunch of places. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. No hands up and nothing in the chat.
Thank you, Brian. I guess then we will move on. So the every single person that was licensed this past winter in condominium management received a conditional license. And depending on their status, there were different conditions. So you can confirm your conditions by going to the licensing tab in your RECA account, and it will specifically say what conditions are on your license. As Shawna mentioned earlier, they won't show up currently on, if you've renewed and you look at your renewed certificate, excuse me, but it will show the accurate information within your RECA account. Once October 1st comes, all people that have renewed and still have conditions on their license will see the conditions on their actual certificate. So when we, this slide applies to those condo managers who recently or currently hold a real estate license. The next slide will apply to those condo managers who have never been licensed. So keep that in mind. So if you've either currently hold a real estate license or have within the last 3 years, then this information on this slide applies. So in the case of associates, you're given a credit for your fundamentals that you would have done for your real estate license. So you do not have to do the fundamentals course for a condominium manager associate license, but you must complete the practice of condominium management. So you have a choice of challenging the exam and not taking the course. And if you're successful in the challenge, then you would not have to do the course, but you only get one chance to challenge the exam. If you fail the challenge, then you have to register with one of the course providers for the course and then complete the exam for the practice of condominium management. You would pay once for the exam after you've taken the course, and then you have, if you fail the first exam, you have up to 3 rewrites, and there is no charge for the rewrites. This must be completed by November 30th this fall. So if by chance you are unable to complete this course requirement by November 30th, you can request an extension, but the extension must be requested by November 30th. And you have to be registered for the course. So you would have had to go to a course provider if you've not completed it by November 30th, register for the course and request a course extension. And then you would have up until March 31st of 2023 to complete the condition. It's very important that you do this properly, because if you don't do it properly, the license is suspended until you have completed the requirements. So if you don't do the process of registering, if you haven't completed the course by November 30th and you don't register for the course and request an extension, you could have your license actually suspended at that point. Or if you do get an extension and you don't complete the course by March 31st, again, there could be, your license could be suspended. So this is the process that's in place as of now. And will remain in place unless the industry council makes changes between now and those dates. For brokers and associate brokers, it's the same thing. If you're currently licensed or you've been licensed in real estate in the last 3 years, you're given credit for the fundamentals course as well as the brokers course. So all brokers for condominium management who were licensed previously in real estate do not have to do fundamentals or the brokers course. They only have to complete the practice of condominium management. And it's the exact same process as far as they have the option of challenging the exam for practices or going straight to the course and then doing the exam. But this must be completed by November 30th. There is no extension available for brokers beyond November 30th. The industry council felt it's important that people who are in a supervisory roles must have the adequate information in order to continue to supervise the associates and the operations of the brokerages. So, so that's the situation for people, as I said, who are currently or have recently been licensed in real estate. Now, moving on to the next slide, This slide applies to those condo managers who have never been licensed with RECA in the past. So you've never held a real estate license, you're not currently holding one, and or if you held one and it was more than 3 years ago, then it wouldn't apply. So the system is a little bit different for these people. So associates that fall into this category have conditions on their license to complete both the fundamentals of condominium management and the practice of condominium management. So they have the choice of challenging the exams for either one of these courses if they choose to go that route, if they're confident that they know the information, or you can go straight to registering for the courses and then doing the exams afterwards. So in the case of associates, again, you must complete these by November 30th. If you haven't completed them by November 30th, then you have to be registered for whatever course you haven't completed and request an extension for that completion. So associates have 2 courses in this instance to complete, and again, if you're not able to get them done by November 30th, very important that you register with one of the course providers for whatever courses are outstanding and request an exemption through RECA for the March 31st extension date. In the case of brokers and associate brokers, you must complete all 3 levels of pre-licensing. So fundamentals, practice, and condominium management for broker program. So these courses have to be completed by November 30th. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, for brokers and associate brokers, there is no extension available at this time. So these dates will be in effect unless, of course, the industry council should decide to make any changes before those dates come up. So don't plan on there being changes. Work towards completing courses and exams on the timeframes that have been explained. Now, the question that came up earlier with Andrew is what applies here. Some condo managers were given an associate broker license based on the information they submitted at the time of their license application in the December-January time period. RECA realizes that not all associate broker condo managers either wanted or needed an associate broker license. Should you be an associate broker and not wish to maintain it and would be happy to have just an associate license, you could just not complete the broker course and exam. So if that condition has not been removed by November 30th, your license will revert to an associate broker, or sorry, an associate condominium manager license. So if you don't do the broker program course and you're an associate broker, then come November 30th, your license will automatically flip from being an associate broker to an associate. So there's no penalty, there's no cost involved. It will just take place that way. So when we did the original condo conditional licensing, it was based on what people put on their affirmations for their experience and time in the industry and their involvement with management of companies or brokerages. So in quite a few cases, there are people that really were given an associate broker license, and it's not something they really need for what they do from their day-to-day practice. So don't be worried about that. If you have an associate broker license and you don't want to maintain that, just simply don't register for the broker program and don't complete it, and we will adjust your license accordingly. So as things proceed and we get closer to the November 30th date, please keep an eye out for emails from us on this issue because if there's any updates or changes, we'll be sending those out as soon as we have them. Now we can entertain questions on this portion of the regarding conditional licensing.
Great. So a few questions coming in. The first one is about the March 31st versus November 30th deadlines. Perhaps you can re-explain that one. like the question is, if the deadline for a licensee is March 31st, why the November 30th completion date? So if you want to just go over who has to do it by November 30th, what has to be done by November 30th, and who the extension is actually for, one more time.
So originally, the Industry Council required that all conditions from licenses in the condo management sector had to be removed by November 30th. But this spring, the Industry Council made a decision to give associate condo managers the opportunity to extend that should they need it. So if you can't complete your course requirements by November 30th and you're an associate, then you can register for whatever courses are outstanding and complete a request for an extension to March 31st, and then you would have the extra 4 months to complete the course requirements.
But is there any formal request they have to do, or they just get that extension once they register by November 3rd?
No, they'll have to register for the course, and once they've registered for the course or courses, then they will have to actually request an extension, and the details regarding the process to request an extension will come out either late October or early November.
I just want to chime in there really quickly to say that what that process will look like, we haven't yet determined. We are, in the midst of trying to get 17,000 people renewed. We just don't have the time to focus on that specific question at this point in time. And that's why once we've got the renewals sort of out of the way, we will be providing more detailed information about whether or not a request needs to be made, how that request would need to be made. So just watch your emails after the renewal period is over, and we'll provide more information at that time.
Perfect. Still more questions coming in. Just let me go over them for a quick sec. So for that November 30th deadline, can that be for all the courses, or does fundamentals have to be finished prior to the end of November to be able to register for the practice course by the November 30th deadline?
I believe that the course enrollments are, they're not being handled as a prerequisite. So you don't need to, have fundamentals completed before you enroll in practice course. You do need to be enrolled in all courses, not necessarily completed all courses. And again, they're not being handled as a prerequisite. So as long as you've enrolled in all the courses that are required at that point, then you would be eligible for an extension.
Great. Yeah. So no prerequisite, just get in all of them. Next question. Why was associate broker not included in the extension? Why did they have to do everything by November 30th?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the decision was made that brokers and associate brokers should have to complete the requirements by November 30th because quite often associate brokers for sure, but quite often associate brokers are involved with management of the brokerage. If that's not the case, if an associate broker is not involved with the management of the brokerage and they don't want to continue with an associate broker license, then they can simply drop the associate broker license and revert to an associate. But if they want to maintain their associate broker license at this time, then they would have to meet the requirements by November 30th. And we're not aware of there being any changes at this point to those requirements.
I'll just add as well, for an associate broker that does plan on downgrading their license class to associate, in order to receive the extension, they would need to make sure that they're enrolled in any non-broker education courses that are required to be completed on their license condition.
Great. Next, we have a question about there being poor pass rates on the exams. What's being done to improve the course material is the question.
So this is actually quite a complicated issue in that RECA is responsible for the exam process and third-party course providers are responsible for the actual courses. So when a course provider has built a course, they put it to RECA for approval. So they don't actually submit the actual course and their materials. They simply sign off an affirmation that the course meets the requirements that were specified for that specific course. So the Industry Council back in the winter and early spring had specified what all the requirements were for the various courses. And the learning outcomes that were expected to be covered in those courses. And what's happened, unfortunately, with the time frame that has happened with this whole process of moving the condominium management industry into a regulated industry, is the time frames have been very tight. So if we were to look at our courses that have been placed for some years with fundamentals and practice of real estate, those courses were developed, and then in their initial time period as they were rolled out, questions were fine-tuned, learning materials were fine-tuned as issues arose, and then after a period of time, most of the wrinkles are resolved. But in this particular case, because the timeframes have been so tight, and the availability of the courses has been a short-term period, and also with exam questions, when you develop exam questions, they go through a whole process as well, because we analyze the responses to the questions. So when you see questions that a lot of people are getting wrong, is it because the question is a bad question? Is it not worded correctly? Are the answers or the selections for answers not clear? Or is the course not covering the material properly? So there could be any number of reasons for there being an issue. And as we've gone through this process over the last 8 or 9 months, as issues arise, so when we get comments back from people who have taken courses or who have done exams, those questions are looked at in the case of the exams, and in the case of concerns about course materials, we then communicate back to the course provider that this particular issue, whatever it might be, has come up several times from various people, and then they have to go back and look at their course material and make revisions if necessary. So it's been an ongoing process, and there were a lot of difficulties in the first several months, but in the last couple of months, I think that the vast majority of issues have been resolved. So when people are hearing that other people have run into some of these issues in the past, many of those issues have been resolved and are no longer a problem. Also with the exams, if somebody gets a mark between 65 and 70, our staff are actually looking at what has taken place for that exam and to see if in fact there's any issues or anything that needs adjusting. So we are doing our best to try to resolve issues and to treat people fairly in going through this process.
Thanks, Doug. Next question is, and I don't know if we have an answer for it. What's the thought process between only having one chance to challenge the exam, but being allowed 3 attempts at the exam after you pay for the course?
Well, I think that what's being looked at is if you feel confident that you know the material for whether it's fundamentals or practices or in managing a brokerage, then you're given the opportunity to challenge an exam. And if in fact you're successful, you've demonstrated that you do know the material that you would get by taking the course. So they only give you the one chance because, I mean, how many times would you realistically let somebody take an exam challenge, until they just keep being allowed to take it until they actually pass it, and incrementally each time they do maybe a little better on the exam. Whereas the philosophy here is simply, if you're able to take the exam challenge and pass it, then you have the sufficient knowledge. If you don't pass it, then the requirement is that you have to take the course and then you retake the exam to demonstrate that you have taken the course, absorbed the information, and can prove that you're knowledgeable. For rewrites, typically there's 2 rewrites allowed for pre-licensing courses. And then if you're not successful, you would have to retake the course before you're allowed to do it. Again, just to prevent that whole issue of just people constantly taking numerous exams in hopes that eventually they would succeed in getting a pass mark. So in the case of the practices exam for condominium management, the industry council made an exception specifically just for that course, the practices, in that if you do the course and you fail the first exam attempt, they will allow you to have 3 more rewrites in that instance. And I believe the thought process there was, this is a totally new course and exam process for material that we haven't had through our RECA as a regulatory body previously, whereas fundamentals and broker program courses for condominium management are very similar to the real estate ones and the material they cover, and are true and tested over time. So there's not the same concerns that there are around the practice course and exams.
Okay, great. Question about the process of moving to from associate broker to associate. If you've been accidentally assigned as associate broker and want to only be an associate, how do you renew as an associate and also request that extension to March 31st?
The assignment of license class, as Doug had mentioned before, was based on the information provided by a licensee at the time that they applied for eligibility for condo licensing. If the information that we relied upon was not accurate or has changed, then we would, it's the option of the licensee to downgrade their license class. However, the condition due date being November 30th means that as you're renewing, and that due date is September 30th, you're going to be renewing the license class that you currently have, and then it would be adjusted after November 30th should you wish to downgrade your license class at that time. So you would renew, even if you are not planning on keeping your associate broker license class, you would need to renew that license class now, and then it would be downgraded later.
Great. Question about someone who is previously licensed as in property management as an associate. Which courses are they exempt from for condo if they're previously licensed as a property manager?
So a real estate associate licensed in property management, they would already have to have applied last December, January for a conditional condominium management if they're doing condominium management. So they would hold a conditional associate license in condominium management. They're not exempt from doing the practices. Every single person that is getting a condominium management license, doesn't matter which level, has to do the practices course or at least do the challenge. But if they don't do the challenge, they have to do the course and then the exam following it.
But they are exempt from the fundamentals course.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. They're likely exempt from the fundamentals if they've done the fundamentals of real estate. It depends how long ago they were licensed in real estate. As Doug had mentioned, if they were licensed more than 3 years ago, then that exemption would fall away. So we do recommend every condo manager licensee log into your MyRECA account, go to the licensing tab and check what courses are required for you specifically. If something doesn't look right with the courses based on your understanding, definitely send us an email. You can email licensing@reca.ca or email education@reca.ca, and we can look into it on a case-by-case basis.
Great. So for the extension to March 31st, will there be any charge or fee?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Great.
And the reason, and the other part of that question, the person said it seems like an unnecessary step to request the exemption. But from a regulatory point of view, you could say this is our sort of little bit of a push for you to make things happen. Again, if you haven't registered for a course by November 30th, and that's been the original deadline that was in place, and you're going to get an extension, if you get an extension and we don't require you to register for the course or courses and actually make things start to happen, what's to say that you just won't keep procrastinating and run this right into March and then run into a problem and be requesting a further extension at the end of March because your license is going to be suspended. So this is our way of sort of egging people on that have not completed the requirements by the end of November to get things together and get things moving so that they can meet the extension of March 31st.
Great. So maybe one of you can just talk briefly about why licensing, relicensing, and renewals is happening right now. It's coinciding with the busiest time of year for condo managers.
Well, there's, I explained this two ways. One is that the provincial government mandated the regulation of the condominium management industry, and the legislation that made this all happen came into effect as of December 1st last year. So RECA had no choice in the matter as to when the regulation and the licensing of everybody in the condominium management industry was to begin. So it all started in the December, January timeframe. It was all supposed to be in place as of December 1st, but we only had about, I think about a third of the people that were needing to be licensed by December 1st. And it took us the rest of December and most of January to get the bulk of the people through the process. So that was the initial licensing. There was no decision made actually about relicensing for the condominium management industry, because once they are licensed, they just fell into the same relicensing cycle that all the other licensees. So RECA only has one renewal date for licensing, and it's for all three industries that we regulate. And so condominium management just fell into that cycle. Now, unfortunately, and I'm fully aware that this course requirement to remove conditions came into play, and it is overlapping when condo managers are very busy, and that's why the industry council gave the availability of the extension to March 31st for the associates, so that if they can't get it completed by November 30th, then they will have hopefully what are quieter months in December through March to meet the requirements.
Okay, great. Practice exams, are they free?
No, there's
I
a charge.
so.
No, there's a charge
Are
for
they not?
practice exams.
Okay. I'm going to look that up.
I believe it's $65 if I remember off the top of my head.
I think you're correct, Doug.
I think you jumped over a question, Brian, from Suzanne about she says you believe the first course is not a prerequisite for the second course. And if I misspoke, I apologize. It is not a prerequisite. The courses can be done in tandem.
And again, that is being done specifically for condo managers with conditional licenses. The normal process for a brand new person coming into the industry would be they would have to complete fundamentals first, once they successfully pass the exam for fundamentals, then they can register for the practice of condominium management. So the normal process requires them to do them in order. But because of the tight time frames and many people wanted to be able to, in some cases, work on both courses at the same time, they got rid of that requirement specifically just for people who are going through this conditional licensing process. Great.
A sort of process question about the practice exams. I don't know if we have an answer for that, but they're saying, so for the practice exams, why do you not get to see the actual questions that you got wrong or correct after the exam?
I don't know the answer to that, Doug. I'm not sure if you do, but that might be a question for our credentialing services department. Doug, did you have any thoughts on that?
yeah, I don't know why there's what the logic
Yeah.
is there.
Yeah, well, I'll reach out to them, and the person who asked that question, I'll send that answer, or our credentialing services will send that to you directly.
Brian, I think a couple hands have been up for a little while before some of these other questions have come in the chat. I wonder if we could maybe address those.
Looks like Jason's first. Jason Auger.
Good morning. Thanks for giving me the time here. My question is about the associate broker timeline and deadline for November 30th. I know I'd asked the question earlier, but I didn't get kind of the answer I was looking for is why there is no extension available for that. Just to kind of give that as an example, or to give an example on that. So I've completed fundamentals. I've completed the coursework on practice of. I'm doing the practice exam tomorrow, and will hopefully be signing up to do the exam within the following weeks. But just I anticipate that I will be squeezing and running out of time to complete the brokerage course and exam between now and November 30th. So I wanted to know either why there is no extension to March 31st, or how we might go about as an industry making that happen.
I'm gonna give a really short answer here, Doug, because I know you've taken a couple kicks at this can. Ultimately, the responsibilities under the legislation for an associate broker are, although they're similar to an associate, they do, from a public perception standpoint, have greater responsibility with the brokerage, and often they do take on additional responsibility. So to sort of echo what Doug has said previously, because of that additional responsibility, the council had felt that these individuals, this specific group of individuals, does need to have the requisite education to continue on with that license class past November 30th.
So an option you would have, Jason, if you did not get it completed by November 30th, would be to just let your license switch from associate broker to associate. And then when you complete the broker course after that, then you'd be able to reapply for your associate broker's license and have it upgraded from associate back to associate broker.
Actually, that's automatic. You don't have to reapply.
Or not apply, but
the system sort of recognizes that you've done that course and then automatically re-upgrades you.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, again, in our brokerage, we have a licensed broker that isn't me. I just want to have the associate so that I'm there to support, and also kind of as a backup and starting the clock on the 5-year. Well, sorry, actually, that's a question mark. That's a question that I've got. Is there's the 5-year time frame for an associate broker to become a broker, but I understood that there was a shortened time frame that was going to be available because of the new licensing, where an associate broker in the practice of condominium management could do that in a shorter time frame. If I do not complete my associate broker by November 30th, does that shortened time frame still apply?
So the experience requirement for broker licensing is 2 out of the past 5 years. And actually, I meant to address that with Andrew's previous question as well. It's not 5 years, it's 2 out of the past 5 years. For the condo industry, condo manager industry, we are considering not only the licensed period of time that the person has been gaining that experience, but also any experience they gained prior to being licensed. So it would be a combination of the two. I hope that clarifies. It's 2 out of 5 years, not 5 years.
Okay,
And
so if that November deadline passed and I did not have the course and the exam complete, and I've completed it afterwards, that would have no effect on my ability to, on my time frame to achieve broker.
No, because it's two out of 5 years of licensed experience in any license class.
So everyone who is already approved with a conditional associate broker's license, we have that information in the system. So if you do revert to an associate, but later complete the broker program, as Shawna said, you will automatically have your license switch from associate back to associate broker.
Okay, sounds good. So our broker will satisfy that requirement, but a couple of us that are associate brokers will likely not, but it sounds like it won't impede us. So thank you for the answer.
You're welcome.
Great, and maybe this we're at our time, but we'll do one last question here. I believe Andrew had his hand up.
Thank you, and I will lower my hand as well. I got the answer to the question that I was going to ask, but in so doing, I'm coming up with a math tabulation error. There are 191 brokerages and 191 brokers. There are 174 associate brokers, maybe a few less after this call. And there's 227 associates. That adds up to 592, not 582. That wasn't my question, but I found this when I was doing the math. So the 582, I think, should read 592, more of an FYI. Unless there's a reason why there's 10 less total.
No, it just sounds like an error.
Thank you. And Brian and Shawna and Doug, I know we hit time here, but thank you, all of you. This is really, and the questions and answers as well, but they were all very helpful. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Andrew. You know where to find us. And I'll just mention too, I do see quite a few other questions coming in regarding the course, the failure rate, the test questions, etc. So I'll just reiterate one last time in terms of contacting us, any follow-up questions that you may have, you're certainly welcome to email us. If it's a licensing question at licensing@reca.ca. If it's an education or course specific question, you can email education@reca.ca. And I'll turn it over to Doug and or Brian to close up. Thanks again for attending. And I know there's a lot of information, and feel free to, access the presentation that we will make available and the recording.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And if any brokers or managers have any questions or need clarification or assistance with anything, feel free to reach out to myself or to Christian Zenoff here at RECA, and we'd be happy to assist you. So with that, we will finish up for today.